Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
All right. Well, good morning and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm Joe Grumbine and I will be your host. And I have a really special guest with us for the first time today. And her name's Shelley Bates. And Shelley and I have been working together now for a few months. Actually, it's time's flipping by pretty quick, but we've been working together on our Gardens of Hope project. And Shelley comes to us with a wealth of resources and a wealth of ideas and experiences involving healthy living. And Shelley, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's get rid of this background because it bothers the heck out of me, but it just makes it to where we have some consistency with the show. All right, now welcome to the real world where we're actually sitting here.
But we're at Willow Creek Springs, so that's exciting.
Exactly, we are. So Shelley, you came to me through a mutual friend, Liz McDuffie, who was actually the very first person who ever interviewed for this podcast, but she ended up not liking it. We tossed it. So, and she hasn't been back to record another episode yet. So anyways, but Liz brought us together and you come to us though with a wealth of experience that has to do with health and healthy living. The way I understand it, you lost a bunch of weight at one point.
Yes.
Most of your life, you have a plant-based diet. You've helped lots of people better their lives and their quality of life. You're a runner. You've got all kinds of experience with regards to health and food and practices. And we have lots of time in the future to go into some of these things more specifically. This first episode, I'd like just to meet Shelley. Let's hear in your words what brings you here and you know some of the things that you would like to talk about. Of course, everybody always calls while I'm in the middle of a show. It never fails. The phone won't ring for an hour, and then all of a sudden I start a show and
it's that time.
Goes, yeah,
we're open for business now.
Tell us about Shelley. How are you doing?
Well, you hit the highlights perfectly. It's actually been a lifelong exploration, and I would say you're absolutely correct. I have throughout my life been heavier. I learned a lot of bad habits from family members in terms of my health. And so basically what happened in my later years is I started to explore things that were going to make my life healthier, longer, and to experience the later years when things weren't as easy to recover from. So
isn't it funny? Like when we're kids, we do all the stupid things that are going to shorten our life.
Correct.
And then hopefully at one point along the way, you're like, oh, wait a minute. I can't keep this up forever.
Correct.
I need to change my ways, repent and be saved or whatever. And hopefully you catch it soon enough and you don't end up in full-blown diabetes and bad addiction habits and the road that so many people go down. But clearly you caught yourself in time.
Well, I was always an athlete. That was probably my saving grace, is that I've been an athlete. I started martial arts when I was 9.
Nice.
And I wasn't a runner right away. I was a bicycler, but I've always enjoyed activities and being active, and that saved me. I think that's really, if there's any lesson you can take, is that you got to keep moving, whatever that movement is, because it does get harder. You may think you're the exception to the rule. It gets harder, and there is a point at which you don't bounce back as quickly. So I did.
That's the biggest thing I noticed is, trust me, I was ruthless on myself as a kid and all the way through my 20s, and I beat myself up. I ate terrible. I didn't sleep. I did drugs and alcohol. I stayed up all night. I worked my ass off, but that was the one positive thing I had going, was that I exercised, not like I didn't go to the gym, but I work construction. I run up and down ladders. I I was always moving,
Yeah.
and I'm a spaz anyways, so it keeps me always moving. But that was the only thing I think that kept me okay.
I think what people may underestimate, though, is what you just said. Exercise doesn't have to be because you get on a bicycle or you go and lift weights in a gym.
No.
It's about movement, really. And it's about, if you're working in construction, you're lifting heavy items.
Oh, yeah.
That's weightlifting.
Big
Period.
time.
So it's not, but it gets harder to do that without supplementing it and treating your body right, because the aches and pains and the recovery time, it just gets longer and longer. The recovery is much more difficult. And to be honest with you, one of the things that kind of changed my trajectory was seeing kind of my future. Honestly, my mother was the example of what not to do,
right.
And her sister was an example of what not to do. And when I saw a picture of the three of us standing next to one another, I have to say,
the camera doesn't lie.
Terrified me. It really, really did. And that was a wake-up call, but that wasn't the kick that I needed to kind of change. As extreme as it may sound, her passing of preventable diseases is what made me change.
Yeah.
It's what made me, I started to lose the weight. I did it very slowly. I had yo-yo dieted on my whole life. If there was a diet out there, I did it. But I started to take care of myself. I exercised more regularly. I changed my eating completely. And that was because I saw my future. I really did. And it was terrifying. It really was. I could have very easily followed her example. She taught me so much in my life, good, but that was the thing that stuck with me. And
what not to do.
Yeah. So I started studying nutrition. I really started to, I think it also came around when the internet was available and you could start looking at people and athletes and what they were doing. And I really started to follow their example of, this is how I recover. This is what I do when I do this. And I was I've always done extreme traveling where it's not about going on a vacation. It's about climbing a mountain or something. So I started looking at people who did those activities or activities that I wanted to do for the rest of my life, including ultra marathons. That was one of the things I really wanted to do. So I followed people and I just took their examples and I did my own study. I didn't just pick somebody and go, well, that's what I'm going to do, because that's foolish too.
Right. You're not them.
I am not them.
Yeah.
I don't have 8 hours a day that I'm devoting because I am not a professional. I'm not getting paid for that. So I had to fit my schedule into my working schedule too, but make sure that it was a balance again. And that led me to changing the way I eat, creating foods, having a relationship with food that was very different than when I was growing up. I actually resented, may sound strange. I resented eating because it took time and it wasn't enjoyable to me. I
got the opposite of that. I would give my whole life to eating if I could. I love it and everything about it. And if it didn't destroy me from eating too much, I mean, it's one of my greatest joys.
It is now one of my greatest joys. I also, that was something I learned to appreciate through.
It didn't help me to love to eat so much, but
it's what you change about what you're eating.
Right.
I mean, okay. Did I love to eat ice cream at 2:00 in the morning?
Of course.
Just until that moment, and then it was over with, and then I moved on. But now looking at food in terms of really preparation and the love that can go into it and the art that you can make it. It can be very, very simple. If you have no time and you just have to create a meal and you go home, but you're eating good food, there's a way that you feel differently. There's an energy about it, and it's an energy that it's provided to you. And I have really come to appreciate that from food, which brings me to the Gardens of Hope and the energy that comes from the food that's growing there, and the microgreens and the vegetables and everything that comes from the ground. And it's feeding me from the inside, and that's feeds my eyes. It's something beautiful to look at. But I lost the weight. it's never perfect. You still struggle,
Sure.
go up and down, but I know
It's an ongoing process.
It's
Like,
a
you know,
lifeline.
I've always thought, you know, if I have to be a slave to it, then it might be more work than it's worth.
Yeah.
But if I can work with it and get the benefit without it
Exactly.
owning me,
Mhm.
you know, I'm still a rebellious teenager in my head. And
Yes.
when you tell me you can't do this, like I did one thing where I can't do it ever again,
Yeah.
and that's tobacco.
Okay.
I consciously made a choice when I was 26 and made a vow to my
Mhm.
creator, and I will never do what I did then. And that's it. That's the one thing I can't do.
Correct.
And yet with food and all of the things that, you know, the habits that
Mhm.
I've developed, I say, well, if I'm with friends and family and I want to break it for a time,
Yeah.
that's fine. You just got to go and pay the price, whatever that is, and
Correct.
get back to it.
It's about balance.
Right.
It's going to be about balance, but you're right about paying the price. If you knowingly go into something, yes, there's a price to pay, but you can also then take that back or undo hopefully what damage that you do. You don't go overboard and become excessive in what's happening. But it
But it's
also
not fair because like the effort that it takes to lose a pound
Mhm.
is nothing like the effort it takes to gain a pound.
Correct.
Like I can gain a
Yes.
pound just having a good time and a fat hamburger with somebody.
Mhm.
And it might take me a couple of days of hard work and
Yes.
fasting to lose that thing. And
that also doesn't get easier as you get
no, it
older,
doesn't. Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. You
It's
think, oh, I've been
more-
doing it for so long,
yes,
it's easy. It's like
yes.
even the cold and the heat and all that, it's like you just sit there and you got to brace
Yeah.
yourself for it. Okay, here we go. I got to go do this thing, which I'll feel better when I'm done.
Sure.
But dang, I don't really want to do it right now.
There's an acceptance that you have to come to realize
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
maybe you will not go back to what you were at 35,
Yeah.
but you're going to be the best at whatever 50, 60, 70.
Right.
And it also ties into pain management. That's the other
Okay.
thing, because the sports that I was doing, there is a lot of recovery that's involved, and it can be painful. You can either overtrain, get hurt, just the sheer feeling of what muscle fatigue is. It may feel good because you know it's a good muscle fatigue,
All
but
right.
it still
It hurts like hell. Yeah.
So
Still can't walk.
yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter why I can't walk. I
Yeah.
still can't walk. So you recover from that, but then that led me into, this is a long way of coming back to how I met Liz. I started to at run expos, there were people this was in the time when CBD was just in its infancy.
Mhm.
And I would go to these run expos and they might have put some CBD into a cream. Try this, and I would rub it on my legs, and it would help for recovery.
Mhm.
And so that ultimately was another tool in addition to studying nutrition and also having I've trained people for running marathons. I used to teach horseback riding. All of that was just another tool to add. And that's what led me to becoming a medical cannabis practitioner. I became a cannabis coach. I've done several other.
So what does that mean, a medical cannabis practitioner?
Is understanding the history of the cannabis plant, of the usage, of the changes of the laws that regulate it now, the changing of those laws, all the way down to the actual components of the plant and how we're learning more and more about it, but that there are studies that will show evidence that the cannabis plant can do this or it can do that. And really knowing then how to dose it for people as well, and understanding that maybe the way that I utilize it is not necessarily the way that it's going to be most effective for somebody else. So understanding their specific needs and dosing, and really just understanding that is another, in addition to, for example, inflammation. That's one of the huge things that our body can suffer from, because there's so many things out there that are actually causing inflammation.
Just like gaining weight, everything causes inflammation.
Correct. And so there are a number of ways that you can eliminate that, and cannabis and CBD and that is a tool to do that. And I spent the good first, I would say, I don't want to say 30 years, but it's at least 30 years of taking Advil and ibuprofen for all of the aches and
Wow.
pains that I had. And I was over-medicated,
Wow.
self-medicated and over-medicated. And I, at some point, and it took me it took me 30, maybe more years to, if I took an Advil or now I was taking prescription strength, and I would take triple the dose for a week at a time in
Yikes.
some cases.
Wow.
There would be just pain that would come from taking that, and I couldn't do it anymore. That was also tied into, as I got older, my body just rejected it. I was completely intolerant to any kind of pain medications that in that regard. And I didn't take the prescription, the really high dose. This is what I used to just maintain.
Wow.
It was so damaging. I'm surprised I have a liver, honestly.
Well, you know what's crazy is one of the ingredients that I work with called NAC is FDA came down on it last year.
Mhm.
And they says, well, you can't have it anymore. And I was like, why? And they says, oh, well, we've determined that it's now a drug, and it's used for Tylenol overdose. And that's the antidote for Tylenol overdose, is this naturally occurring compound that we use for respiratory support and other helpful inflammatory issues. And but now that it's considered to be an official drug, the FDA is trying to keep it from us, but some of us don't care. We're just going to do what we're going to do. And there's a battle going on about it right now. So
nobody cared that I was taking upwards of 1,200 to 1,800 milligrams of ibuprofen a day.
Oh, that's because the drug companies were making money off of your legal commerce. I mean, it's totally legal. FDA said it's all right.
And I was doing it, and then thank goodness my body rejected and at least
it kill you first.
Correct. Exactly. I got a warning.
Sometimes you just get that rejection notice and
it
comes with a coffin.
Yes, but I got a warning, and I could not tolerate it. I couldn't keep it down anymore. And you speak of pharmaceuticals. That was another thing. My mother, if it was a pharmaceutical drug,
right,
because it was given to her by a doctor, that was fine. She was anti anything else, and she was part of an era.
Right.
But that was,
and it just so happens that was the era where the grain companies got involved in nutrition, and the pharmaceutical companies got involved in the medical education, and it was magic. Better living through chemistry, right?
And she had
some margarine, some cornflakes, a little whole milk on top of that, or skim milk, even better.
Oh yeah,
white
water,
a little powdered milk, and man, you'll be healthy forever.
Exactly.
And if it hurts, well, go take some drugs. We got a doctor; they'll hook you right up.
We have something for that right there. But that led me to seek alternatives because I couldn't tolerate it anymore. And the good thing is I think it's because I couldn't function. I mean, I worked all the time, and I had to be present. So I had to eliminate the pain, but yet I couldn't take something that was going to alter my mind in a way. So the Vicodins, the really, extreme drugs. I also was not recovering from surgeries. I mean, I was healthy enough. I was healthy enough to keep going. And then that just became more and more and more and more difficult. And then I had to seek alternatives. It was either or. You do this and you keep going, or you don't. And then that was going to, and again, my mother was the example of what happens when you don't keep on top of it. And I believe in my heart, unfortunately, that had there been intervention, it may have been too late by the time, and she passed at 72, and there was literally nothing that she was doing that she couldn't have with the right intervention.
Went through the same thing with my dad. He died at 70, and it was all avoidable.
Yeah.
And he was a surgeon. He knew better.
And and my mother knew better too.
Yeah.
She worked at the VA. She was a psychologist. I mean, they all know what's right for everybody else, but they look internally and at themselves.
Yeah. Heal thyself, right? Yeah. Well, listen, I think we've spun out our allotted
Okay.
time for this first episode, but it's a pleasure to open up this door. I
Yeah.
suspect we got a lot to talk about.
Definitely.
And if somebody wants to get, now you do coaching.
I do
and
health
you
coaching
all of that.
and
So
training.
this is sort of your little plug spot. So why don't you tell us, how does somebody get a hold of Shelley if they want to glean from your experience or consult or book a session?
So I've had since 2015, I've had ShelleyBatesWellness.com, and you can go there and you can look at my website, and or you can email me at ShelleyBatesWellness@gmail.com for information, and
that's also in the link
correct.
We've got put up there for you.
And that's for information about food or pain management using Willow Creek Springs products.
Fantastic. All right, Shelley. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
I'm looking
thank
forward
you.
to doing this again. And
Absolutely.
this has been Joe Grumbine with Healthy Living Podcast, brought to you by Willow Creek Springs. Thanks for joining us.